Test 1, 2. Hey. Percubaan suara 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 1, 2.
the hall. Okay?
Okay?
Yeah, that one's okay.
Hey.
1, 2, 3.
Good morning. Okay. Yeah, answer.
Okay, 1 minute. Yeah, Faisal. Mr. Faisal.
I salute you. I was with you guys last night. You're still very energetic. Yeah. Because I wish I could tell you.
If if I may ask your cooperation, can we have participants on the end tables to move towards the middle? Thank you. The same on the other side. Can we have participants filling up the middle section of the table, please?
Ya, saya akan. Ya, ya. You ada video UIA kan? Okay, good.
Right. Let's fill up the middle two section, okay, and leave the end. All right. Nobody, silakan. Mana pula Faizal? All right. Jeff, can we get started? Yeah. Right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We'll get started. Yeah. It seems that this event has been a very successful networking opportunity. We can't seem to stop talking to each other. Right. So this is a much awaited program of the conference forum to deliberate some of the issues that we face in the community of natural product scientists. And today we're going to navigate our discussions and deliberations toward a regional cooperation. So we have up on the stage panels representatives from Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, as well as Malaysia, as well as an industrial player. Okay? So without further ado, because we are quite pressed to time, let me just give a brief introduction to our host and guests for the forum today. A very short one because we have been talking to each other, getting to know with each other and discussing many interesting topics together. Right, so the forum today will be hosted by Professor Jeffrey Cordell, who is no stranger to us here in Malaysia and also the surrounding region. Currently, Professor Cordell is a visiting professor at UiTM. We thank you, Prof. Cordell, for gracefully accepting this task to be the host for the forum. Thank you so much. Okay. And we also have on the panel Professor Dato' Dr. Ibrahim Jantan, who also needs no introduction. He is the past president of Malaysian Natural Product Society, a pharmacist by training, and has been an activist for the natural product science. Prof. Ibrahim is very active in advocating herbal medicine, talking about various issues, and sometimes he prepares template answers for us in MMPS to give out the answers to the public who raise many of the trendy issues on the natural products. Okay, thank you so much, Prof. We have Professor Jonel Saludis from Philippines, from University San Agustin, Philippines, who has actually bring a delegation from Philippines to the conference. So we have been trying to establish good collaboration or rather activate collaboration among Malaysian scientists and Philippines again. So it has been a healthy development. Thank you, Prof. Jonel. And we have a young lady, the only lady on the stage is Dr. Anne Premrutai Tili Let Decha. I'm sorry, it's a very difficult name to pronounce. Okay, so very kind Dr. Anne, may I call you Anne? Okay, to grace our meeting, accept our invitation, talking on behalf of the young scientists from Thailand. Okay, so she will also share her experience and her views from Thailand. Okay? And from Indonesia, we have Professor Dr. Muhammad Rafi from Bogor. Okay? Indonesia and Malaysia shares a very close relationship in terms of the plants we study, the work we study, and also the culture and many things. So not surprisingly, many of the issues that we face in natural product are also being shared by our friends in Indonesia. So it's good now to hear firsthand from Professor Muhammad Rafi. And finally, and not least, is Mr. Muhammad Faisal Ahmad Fazil. Okay, our industrial panel here. He is the founder and managing director of FA Herbs, Sendirian Berhad, and Tanah Merah Tropical Spa Sendirian Berhad. Tanah Merah, I think, is a famous brand name in Malaysia. Thank you very much, Mr. Faisal, for accepting my very last-minute invitation. I have been communicating with Mr. Faisal for several weeks, but somehow I overlooked sending him the official letter. But anyway, he has gracefully come, and then we hope that with his presence, we can bridge some of the important issues which has been a gap between academia and industry. Okay. With that, I think I will pass this session to Jeff. Now you have like half an hour left, but we will try to keep things in track and keep the time. Jeff, the floor is all yours.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here for this forum. I will admit it's kind of been a dream of mine for many years to hold a forum like this with international representation. And I want to thank our guests, our panelists here, so much for being participants in this and representing your countries. And I think we're going to have a very interesting discussion this morning. There are many, many topics that natural products research, traditional medicines, phytotherapeuticals, dietary supplements are facing around the world. A lot of them relate to quality issues and how we get and how we maintain quality. Talk a little bit more about that this afternoon, putting the patient first. Given that number of topics, we managed to kind of bring it down to 4 topics that we're going to focus on this afternoon, or this morning and a little bit this afternoon. The first one is the impact of environmental change and sustainability, and how that impacts natural product research, how that impacts traditional medicines in this region of the world. We're going to talk a little bit about quality control and regulatory harmonization, recognizing that those are huge issues with many subtopics. We're going to touch on the issue of data systems and consolidation of data systems, the sharing of data, and how that would work. And finally, we're going to talk about developments in scientific publishing and all of the changes that are going on generally, globally, but some of the changes that have occurred in this country based on the events of July the 13th. So we'll be talking about that in a little bit of detail. So let's begin this with environmental change. So much to talk about here. So I'm not going to burden you with all the issues, but one of the things that we have to be aware of here, for me, is this issue of how does environmental change, how does sustainability, how are they impacted in the long term, for traditional medicine, quality control, and all of the impacts of availability and accessibility with respect to the patient. So it's looking at this long term, and it's looking at the concerns for how the research gets done to address those issues. What's needed, and what's the impact on existing standards, existing regulations, as more impact from sustainability issues appear, and as certain medicinal plants disappear. So with that as like the first topic, who'd like to take a stab at that one? We're looking for volunteers here. So we're looking at sustainability of medicinal plants. We're looking at how that impacts, how climate change is going to impact. For example, rising sea levels, potential drought, potential hotter summers, additional rains, etc., etc. Are people concerned about that? And does that become an issue? Does that become an issue with respect to the product that appears on the market for the benefit of the patient? Who wants to take that one? Yeah? Janelle, you want to try? Go ahead. You have a microphone there. It should be.
Natural products are environmental friendly. And they are also biodegradable. With all these properties, they of course perhaps they have very great impact for sustainable value for the future. And I believe it's a good alternative for synthetics. Because although synthetics have been around, there's a revival
Yeah.
It's a very good pollution environment, and also using, for example, biodegradable products rather than plastics. And also it's very good carbon absorption.
Yeah.
People absorb carbon dioxide and also the measure. So these are many things that I think contribute, nature products contribute towards sustainability.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ru. Let me ask Janelle. We've got two countries here that have a myriad of islands. And how big are the concerns with respect to access to traditional medicines over, let's say, a 20, 30-year period as sea level rise in Indonesia and in Philippines?
I was just about to add to what Prof. Jantana said. Because I will cite the situation of the Philippines, which is an archipelago, and at the same time Indonesia's situation, which is a bigger archipelago, on how susceptible both countries are to environmental and climate changes. And we could see two scenarios here: the marine environment and the terrestrial environment. So both Jakarta and our city, Iloilo City, are flood prone and will be forecasted to be in waters 50 years from now. The water is rising, Jakarta is sinking. I understand, if I understand correctly. So what do we do here? Let me cite effects of these environmental changes in our marine work. Dr. Dalisa is here, a colleague. In our recently published work in scientific reports, we're looking at exactly the same species, just collected from different locations. And if you just do morphological studies on it, they look the same, except if you look at their metabolos. So we're looking at the same strains, which means these environmental changes will be affecting the kind of secondary metabolites that we may be getting, which may be different from now in a few years later. So there's pros and cons. One, the molecules that we're looking at may no longer exist later on as a response to the changes in environment, or these environmental changes may elicit new responses and produce new metabolites. Those are pros and cons. I'll go to the terrestrial side. Traditional medicine, similar in all ASEAN countries, are either practiced through handed down traditions from those either already in the cities or those that are already commercializing or producing in large scale, or by indigenous peoples. And that's where the richness of a lot of these traditional medicines are. What do we do and what have we been doing so far? Our community of natural products scientists and even industry partners have been directly working with indigenous communities, because they are very valuable resources in helping protect these practices, those that are already documented and those that are yet to be documented. Second, environmental changes affect the livelihood of people. It's not just about this drug discovery or medicine, search for medicines. Basic needs are affected. Again, I'll cite examples of indigenous peoples because they are at the edge of survival. So we're not just doing science, we're doing sociological work to help indigenous peoples. I'll cite an example. We've just started working with indigenous peoples in Mindanao that harvest these essential resins that are used in industry. Now we have realized and noticed during our sociological work that they would rather cut these trees and convert to charcoal than protecting these plants. So what we do is we work with the local government to ensure that the resins that they collect is purchased by industry at a very reasonable price. They are not put at the lower end. So that's even at the sociological. The scientific and natural products work will come in after there's a social preparation. So we have to look at the holistic aspect of our work.
Thank you, Janelle. Thank you, Janelle.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, we have similarity to face the same problem in the Southeast Asian regions, especially Indonesia, the biggest country in Southeast Asia. Then we know that last few months ago, Jakarta suffering from the environmental pollutions. The skies aren't blue anymore for 2 months. So yeah, we have to face it about thinking and something else. And then yeah, about our big plans also that yeah, bother our neighbors like for the forest fire and something else. So for the yeah, climate change, maybe yeah, we will have faced some many problems about that. Yeah, I agree with Professor Chan and also Professor Chandan that maybe some yeah, metabolites comes from the plants. Plants is very adaptive for the yeah, changes in the conditions. So yeah, I have some data that I planted in 3 consecutive years for our plants in the our medicinal plants garden. Yeah, there is some changes about the quantity and also for the quality of the our material that will face for the commercialization of the products. So I think we have should to take to obstacle this to tackle this problem. So we have so yeah, like some for the like the quality or something else that we have to something else. Yeah, so we have I think yeah, Professor David said that only the scientific base for the conclusion of something else, and then we have to for the business and for the tribe and for something else we have to have more collaboration about it.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Dr. Ann from Thailand.
Right. I totally agree with everyone. And the thing is, like in Thailand, for the Thai traditional medicines, we normally use as the multi-herbal recipes. So basically, like each recipe normally contains over 20 different plants inside, and we claim for the treatment itself for like ages like over 40 years or over 50 years. So the thing is, like when the climate change, especially in Thailand for flooding, because the flooding period is like a lot extended nowadays, and it become more seasonal of rainy throughout like probably half of the year. So basically we lost of some specific plants that might be the active one in our recipes. So the thing is, the government and the faculty thinks that like we have to put the knowledge and put the effort in the agriculture. So basically, our farmers doesn't have enough knowledge to protect the plants and how to like, how can I say, develop about the agriculture techniques in order to protect plants. So we try to put the educational system into them to raise their knowledge to do that. And another way is that we try to find a substituent of that plants that try to be existing by like putting into like you call the museum of the plants that really needed in the market, but still be almost distinct. So basically, like we try to find the plants that have very closest species for the substitute and as well, and check the secondary metabolites and also the active ingredient inside, just in case, like, you know, when we lack of the things we want, we can have at least something like Sutton Institute instead.
Thank you. Mr. Faisal, how concerned is industry about issues related to sustainability and environmental change? How big an issue does that come up for you?
I think anything that would impact profitability is a concern for the industry. That's the honest truth.
Right.
You know, a lot of, you see a lot of advertisement talking about all the thing that we do for the environment, how is to enrich human life. It's poppycock. Basically, the industry are more looking at margins, profit, and all that.
Yeah.
But I think the responsibility for things like this, I wouldn't say solely, but I think the industry must play a bigger part. Like for example, researchers, you guys are doing wonderful things, but the one that commercialize, the one that basically pollute are usually the industry. You know, and one of the things that we have started doing for many years for Tanah Merah, and people used to laugh at us, like for example, we do minimal packaging, we do non-bleach recycled paper, and when we started coming up with non-bleach recycled paper many years ago, people say, oh, how come your product is expensive, but it all look like bungkus belacan, bungkus nasi lemak, this is like cheap food, you know, the way, because we use brown paper. And people say, oh, your product is expensive, why don't you have boxes? And I always ask the same question. All those boxes, that when you buy product, what do you do with it? You throw it away, so why is it even necessary? And the whole idea, like what the industry is doing, like for example, creating more and more packaging, the environmental impact is disastrous. And, you know, and the industry sometimes come up with coin word, so let's recycle. You know, we've been talking about the recycling agenda for what, 50 years, 60 years? And as of now, less than 4% of the world's plastic have been recycled. So the recycle agenda is a marketing ploy. And I think for mostly, these are mostly a ladies thing, you have this perception that the more product you use, the better it will be. This is not true. Like, you know, the Korean beauty, you have 10 steps before you go to sleep. Do you actually have the time to do 10 steps of facial cleansing before you go to sleep? Nobody have the time, especially all the from the research body is actually looking at lower carbon footprint range of products. This is something very exciting for us. I'll give you a good example because nobody have heard of this lower carbon footprint range of product. This is something that we want to start looking, and we have been testing it for the past 2 years. Because of the COVID pandemic, I think everybody have been using so much hand wash, right? We wash our hands so much more now. But every time you finish one bottle, you throw away the bottle, and then you start buying new products. But the bottles, the pump bottle can easily be used 15 times more. So what we are working now is actually selling, looking at formulating a product that once you finish, all you need to get is like this sachet where you put it inside the bottle, add water, and immediately, lo and behold, you have a new hand wash. You know, and of course, for something that we have been doing, that we make sure every single ingredient have to be biodegradable. We are even looking at biodegradable plastic. Sure. So this is somewhere in the future. And further downstream, one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen, especially on the supply of raw material, and this is, I think, where the researchers are essential. You need to do pragmatic, applicable research. Of course, we have all this high-end research. This is really wonderful, going to the molecules and all that. But pragmatic, applicable research the industry can use. For example, agroforestry. Everybody have heard of saw palmetto, right? Saw palmetto, I think a majority, more than 70 or 80% of the raw material that's supplied to the world come from agroforestry. They have done it successfully. Right. I think I'm right about that. I think. Yeah. So I think, especially when you're working with herbal products are not monocrop products. Completely two different things. And this is where we started having problem, like the problem that we had with kumbang harimau, with Eurycoma longifolia. There's a special beetle that start eating the shoot of the tree because they introduce it as monocrop. And then they started spraying, and then the bug becomes stronger, started spraying more and more. It's a vicious cycle. But if you do it into monocrop or mixed planting and all that, which is a traditional way of planting and where you can actually work with indigenous people, this is where you can still have sustainability, give opportunity for the indigenous people, and at the same time maintain the quality of the product. I think we need to go really upstream or downstream. I'm always confused about that. To actually start looking at the source on a pragmatic kind of way. So go back to the basic. And I think from the industry, we have to have this responsibility of making sure that the product or whatever you give to the consumer are sustainable. And the consumers are demanding this now. Consumers are getting smarter and smarter. So we have no choice.
Yeah, I think you raised... that it's a very good issue because it raises the general issue, which I don't think we're going to get into today, of collaboration between industry and academia, and who defines an agenda, and is that a collaborative agenda that serves the consumer, the patient? Yeah. We have time for one quick question or comment from the floor, if anybody has one. We have a floating microphone around. Yeah? Do we have a microphone on the floor? Yeah, thank you. Yes, Darlene.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Cordell, for this open forum regarding the natural products challenges here in the Philippines, in Asia. So I would like to comment on the words given by Mr. Mohamed
Faisal, yeah.
So what we have been doing in the Philippines in order to create a partnership with industry, because we know here in Asia, industry has its own, they are working like a silos. They're working by themselves, and then the academe, and research institutes, it's another silo. So there is still really a gap of how to translate the basic research into something that is productive. So what we've been doing in the Philippines, and I hope our ASEAN regions can also duplicate, is that our government created a program wherein at the very first, or at the beginning of a research, the industry has already played in. So we have a program called CRADLE. CRADLE is collaborative research and development to leverage economy. And so this has been running for 3 years now under the Science for Change program of the Department of Science and Technology. And this really take off, the partnership between the industry and then the academe or any researchers for that matter. And so at the end of the CRADLE program, science has been applied, plus the product is already there in the market. So perhaps that is something that we, other countries in the ASEAN region could follow from practices in the Philippines.
Thank you, Dora. Thank you very much indeed. A very nice comment. Greatly appreciated. Any other comments on this topic and before we move on to another topic? Okay, we're going to move on now to a topic of quality control. There was a survey done a little while ago that relates back to the traditional medicines and dietary supplements in 110 countries around the world. And based on that survey, which had about 100,000 participants in it in terms of the survey, it was very large, the level of contamination, of adulteration, of misidentification, all those parameters that diminish what is actually in the packet, is about 26%. It's about 26%. So you have about a 1 in 4 chance of being wrong when you select a product, or 3 out of 4 chance of being right. To me, that's never been appropriate. That's my bias. And many of you know I've been talking about that for a long period of time. We also have an issue with the standards that are being used for markers, and the consideration of whether they are actual biomarkers or whether they're just kind of holding the position markers before the active compounds are produced. So for example, there's 2 categories of compound that fall into this group. One are called pains, and the other are called IMPs. And people have been talking about this since about 2010. So it's not exactly a new topic. IMPs started in 2016, and pains started in 2010. And basically what they are compounds like quercetin and gallic acid and compounds like that people are using as a biomarker. Quercetin is kind of like beta-cytosterol. It's almost ubiquitous, and has, I believe, over 3,000 biological activities noted so far. So you would expect it to be active. If it's present in the plant, you would expect it to show activity. And so the question is, where does that fit into the notion of providing a standard for a traditional medicine or for a dietary supplement? We're moving into a situation of blockchain technology now with respect to farm to pharmacy. And there are systems that are already operating in other marketing areas, in certain foods areas now, where it's possible to trace through blockchain technology the origin and all the quality control aspects right through to when you, as the consumer or the patient, acquire that material from your shop. And so the question here is there any progress in that area with respect to traditional medicines? On top of all this, there's the issue of harmonization. And there's the issue of whether, in fact, regulatory aspects that could be harmonized with respect to particular traditional medicines and dietary supplements, where the harmonization would improve the lot of the manufacturers because they would only be dealing with one set of regulations across a region. So let's just begin to tackle that. And let me ask the question, let me start with Indonesia here. And what's the situation in Indonesia with respect to regulations and quality control as far as traditional medicines? And what do you perhaps see as changes that might be coming in the future?
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Jeff. Yeah. Yeah, we call it standardizations. And this is like, we have been talking 30 years ago, still from 30 years ago until now in Indonesia. Because, yeah, our FDA sometimes, they updated some technology or something else, or in the industry or the government or something else, but sometimes because of lack of human sources, and then for the in the industry also. So when we would like to introduce something new, for the quality control, like maybe you use not only the common biomarker like you said, quercetin, gallic acid, or something, curcumin. You should maybe use like active pharmacological compound for the biomarker. Is it the ideal one? Or if you have already done clinical trials and you find the biomarkers, it's very ideal. But sometimes because of, in Indonesia, we still struggling with the concept of the standardizations, because if we would like to adopt it every single guidelines from like European or American herbal pharmacopea or something. Yeah, there is some common from the industry that we would like we cannot use that kind of guidelines because we have like only like organoleptics or something else. So because of that, but now our FDA is force the industry for getting some like for the authentications of raw material using the TLC profile minimum, and then also if you would like to we have some program like jamu. Jamu is traditional medicine in Indonesia. To scientific background is already to be researched to have some good control in the quality, efficacy, and also safety. And then I think now I also invite by our FDA to the panel extract. We now prepare it for the good common practice for the from the raw material until the finished product, how to control the quality of the medicinal plants. So by using more sophisticated approach, we would like to know we would like to develop our new standardizations of our herbal medicines.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Anne, can you share with you a situation in Thailand?
In Thailand, I would say that we try to train our staff because normally there's staff that try to do with screening of the adulteration of the raw materials need to be passed the course for the botany and also the phytochemistry screening. So basically, like we found that like if we receive the raw material, which is the majority in the dry plants, so it's going to be very difficult to identify which one is the authentic one and which one is the adulterated one. And that thing that the staff has to be trained and pass the course in order to briefly check it for the first screening. And then once there has been, the plant has been transformed into the powders, we're going to check with the chemical identification. But the thing is that what is the actives inside in probably over 100 plants that we have to use in our manufacturing unit. That is quite a problem. So they put some of the bioactive markers, which probably is not the active one, but we think it's pretty common to find in pretty much most of the plants. So basically we do with the fingerprints to the HPTLC and also with the HPLC itself as well to see the pattern and the form of the chromatograms and the fingerprints there, whether it have the consistency among the batches or not. So basically, like if it could pass through those standards, it will be like briefly characterized as is a part raw material for further production. So that's the way we control the raw material before the production part. But like after when we finish with the product, like final product, we have to like done the screening again because most of the dosage form in Thailand is going to be either tablets, capsules, or powders. So it's quite easy to just like redissolve it with some solvents and test with the chromatography one more time. So that way we try to check with the quality control. But the thing is like in our country, they never have been like the national standardization throughout the country. So each facility have their own methods to do the quality check. So that's gonna be difficult to say whether the level of the quality controls among the different faculties are the same or not. Some claim for themselves that we have the highest standard for the quality control, so our raw material is very best. And another place gonna say that no, ours is probably better because we have this kind of method. So that's kind of like debatable even among the organizations in Thailand.
Janelle.
I I have some thoughts. Some thoughts on this at the ASEAN level, as well as translated at the national level. So efforts have been on policy level on the ASEAN to harmonize the quality on policy, that's what I'm saying. On policy, there's been efforts. In fact, in 2015, the ASEAN Harmonization Technical Working Group has already released guidelines on what could be put in label claims, what's allowable, and how to standardize the safety measures for discoveries that lead to commercial products, because this is what gets in the hands of the consumers, the commercial products. However, provisions there in that harmonization guideline give the national government still the option to adopt this. It's not a mandated order to be adopted. The national government and the regulatory agencies of the national government have the option to adopt it. In fact, there's an option for an early adoption even before the actual ASEAN framework is put in place. So there's an FDA rule, the national FDA role, whether to adopt these or not. In the Philippine situation, we have not adopted it yet because there's a stall in the implementation, and as discussed with the national agencies, that they are waiting for the ASEAN framework to be put in place. I'll give you examples. I'm not talking just about traditional medicine in the language of natural products. I would also like to bring into the table other forms of products that require understanding of natural products. And we're talking about functional foods too, right? Because natural products research is not only about drug discovery. So in our recent experiences, if you develop a product that may have the claims of biological activity, but it's not a drug yet, there's no regulatory framework in the Philippines.
Right.
The good fallback for these kind of products is food supplements, and it will carry the label no approved therapeutic claims, despite the scientific studies that comes with the product. Hence, this no approved therapeutic claim has the good side and the bad side. For those that are well studied and demonstrated, then it's beneficial to the consumers. But if there's this provision could be taken advantage of by those who have other plans, because as long as there's no approved therapeutic claim, they could sell snake oil, essentially, right? Because there's no claims, it's at the option of the consumers to buy food, because the government could not tell you what you are supposed to eat because it's treated as a food supplement.
Yeah. Right, right. Mr. Faisal.
There's two issues here. One is in regard to the way the researchers are conducting their research on standardization and all that. I'm sure you're all aware, when it comes to traditional medicine, there's always, especially Asian traditional medicine, is very rarely you have a single plant.
Right.
It's always synergistically, okay? Like jamu, ramuan, the Ayurveda and all that has always been the combination of synergistic ingredient. Each ingredient, even sometimes poison, they would add something. In Ayurveda, certain things that are poison, but when you use certain materials to process it, it neutralizes the poison. A good example is our famous Tongkat Ali, a research done by Arwah Professor Zari Ismail has shown that Tongkat Ali, when you do go back to the traditional way of doing it, which is actually when you boil, it would remove any chances of all those alkaloids that can be dangerous to be extracted. So you are supposed to take the drink. But then, of course, a lot of the traditional medicine practitioners say, oh, Tongkat Ali is good, so they started taking the roots and they grind it and then they put it in capsule and then people were buying it, which is highly dangerous. And of course, the TCM manufacturers started putting it inside alcohol and turn it as an alcohol tonic, which is also dangerous because solvent extract the alkaloids. So I think researchers have to go back to the traditional way of doing it, because when they started going into something that's away from the traditional, you have to respect the traditional way of processing. Because I have certain researchers who say, oh, you see, Tongkat Ali, we have proven that Tongkat Ali is poisonous, because what they do, they start doing solvent extraction, identify the alkaloid, see, this will cause liver damage. Then suddenly make a sweeping statement that Tongkat Ali can cause liver damage. And of course, the mainstream newspaper love things like that, and then it will be all over the world, all over the mainstream, say Tongkat Ali causes liver damage, which is not fair to the industry, which is not fair to the traditional medicine practitioners, and there's lack of respect, I find, to the traditional practitioner method of doing things. And there's a lot of things that we take for granted. Like, for example, I was always being very fascinated by Gambis Rawak. And for the longest time, Gambis Rawak is a very potent analgesic. And we use it to basically as a sex aid, because it numbs the penile area, so a man can perform much longer. I mean, we are all adults here. You know, and I was quite surprised, because for the longest time I thought Gambis Rawak was actually from one plant, Uncaria gambia. But it is not. It's actually one plant plus many other ingredients to create a process to extract the resin. And one of the ingredients that they use is actually bee venom. I was very surprised when I heard this. You know, so I think the researcher have to work together with traditional formulators, traditional people who are very, very knowledgeable when it comes to tradition. I remember attending one conference where it is a traditional product conference, but everybody on stage was pharmacists, doctors, and bureaucrats. Not a single person from the traditional industry. I said, what the hell is this? So that level, from my mom was a traditional herbalist. So I don't really consider myself a traditional herbalist, yeah, but my mom is a traditional herbalist. And I think there must be a certain level of respect from the researchers to the people who have been doing this for generations, you know. So there must be, you have to talk and understand better.
Yeah, that's about respect.
Yes, it is about respect.
It's about respect.
And I do find, forgive me for saying so, there's a lack of respect.
I understand that.
Yeah. And in regard to, we're talking about harmonization, so we had a short talk about harmonization.
We did.
Honestly, not impressed. Because we've been talking about Asian harmonization. I was in one of the working group that many years ago, many years ago, we were talking about harmonization. And I feel that the only country that actually sort of encouraged harmonization is actually Malaysia, because the idea came from Malaysia. But unfortunately for us to export to Indonesia, forget it. For us to export to Philippines, like you said yourself, the local FDA have the right, and it has been used as a block to protect the local industry, which I understand. So my issue is this: if all the country want to talk about harmonization, be serious about it. Walk the talk, not only on paper, but at the end of the day, at the back there is a caveat. I say, if we feel like it. You can't. We've been talking about harmonization for so many years.
That's right.
I can't even send a postnatal product to Indonesia, it will be blocked.
Yep.
You know? So on the industry, we are not impressed. Yeah, I mean, there's the honest truth.
All right, thank you. Ibrahim, do you have a comment?
Faisal, you mentioned about lack of trust. I think, as far as Malaysia is concerned, it's more of lack of communication between the stakeholders. Because when you come up with like quality control guidelines, harmonization guidelines, so on, you need collaboration. You need a lot of interactions between all parties. So what's happening? I think, for example, coming up with guidelines on the most recent on guidelines on use of nature products for therapeutic use. Although they have participation of people from institutions, but I think it's a lack of participation of people from industry, for example. So there's a lot of miscommunications, a lot of consumer, and also people in industry. They don't really understand the requirement. A good example, for example, there's a regulation gap on traditional medicine. I think those industries should know that, Faisal, because they only have two criteria of claims. They have the general claims, and then they have the high claim. They don't have the middle claim. So, but unfortunately, people in industry, many of them, they don't realize this. So when they register their products, they are not sure under which category. So in Malaysia, they have either a product can go into as a food, as a drug. Drug will comprise of health supplements, traditional medicines, yeah, and then another category is cosmetics. So most people try to promote their products under drugs, because that's where they gain a lot of buyers and so on. Market is bigger if it's as a food. So what happened is more about miscommunication, how to put a proper claim for the products. So I think Malaysia, I heard they are doing that now, moving towards coming up with the middle claim. Because as scientists, people like us, most of us are working on cell line, animal studies. Clinical trials is a bit maybe far away from us there, because it's very difficult, very costly and so on. So most of the papers published by researchers in Malaysia working on cell lines, on animal products, and their results are not being used at all, because it's not in line correlate with what's in the regulation. Let's say come up with animal study, antihypertensive, right? So it's not being used to come up with any product development unless they move ahead towards clinical trial, which is not easy. So that's it. It's a lack of communication. When they come up with any guidelines, they really have to sit down to look at what are the limitations, what are the constraints, what are the opportunities present between the authorities, between the government authorities or the enforcement authorities, researchers, the industry players. We have to sit down together and look at something that's doable for the country, rather than putting guidelines the industry don't understand, cannot achieve it. So I think this is a very important first step that we should do in Malaysia. Yeah. Of course, at global level or regional level is harmonization. As mentioned, Chief, it's not easy. Been trying to do that. Different countries have different markets, market needs, they introduce different guidelines, but to harmonize them together is not easy. Of course, the most important target or objective is to remove the trade barriers, because so that product from Malaysia we can market in Thailand, Indonesia. Another thing is consumer interest, because for consumer the most important is safety. But what's happening when people market a product is more of efficacy. They want to, so they promote the product for its efficacy. But we, as a scientists, regulatory bodies, the most important is safety. So these are issues that I think need to be solved. I think it's a lot of miscommunication between all parties.
Yeah, thank you, Brahma. I mean, it raises a whole host of issues, and certainly issues that relate to whether there is in fact a need for this kind of middle class, this third class of natural medicinal agent where safety and some efficacy has been established, where modest claims can be made. And there are some countries that are kind of moving in that direction. Because, I mean, let's be reasonable about this. It's not going to happen that you're going to convert a traditional medicine at a cost of $2.6 billion or more into a fully fledged, globally available drug. That's not on. And yet you want to protect the patient in a more realistic manner to show, basically because you want to make sure that they know that that product is going to work for them, and that they're having something that is approved at some level. That's a very controversial view. I know that, because medical profession keeps pushing against that, and other professions push against that. But we've got to make this transition at some point, in my view. And getting people together to sit around a table and thrash out some of these issues is absolutely critical. And I can assure you that it will become more critical, much more critical, as we move to a whole different aspect, which is decarbonization and defossilization, you might call it. We have time for, do we have time for one comment, or should we move on to another topic? Move on? Okay. I want to go to a very different topic now, which is data and AI, and the impact of that in terms of natural product research. And I want to make this fairly short because I have another major topic that we need to get to. One of the dreams that we've had for several years, some of us, is a single portal that would be useful in terms of botanical, chemical, biological, pharmacological, clinical, product-based information that would be available in your smartphone as an app. There's movement in that direction. There needs to be much more. And one of the major aspects, one of the major barriers to making that available is the siloing of data, the siloing of data systems, and the siloing of accrued data, whether that's spectroscopic data or analytical data or biological data, and how that gets accrued in labs and not distributed effectively. And we're going to blend into a publication issue soon, but we're moving in that direction as we move more in terms of open science. And the establishment of platforms within various systems. It might be within an academic institution, it might be within an industry, where that information becomes available, globally available, and is not behind firewalls. So I'd like to know from various countries here whether there are any initiatives that they're aware of that would begin to be setting up platforms where information can be shared and be globally available through an app or a website or whatever. So anybody like to take that one on? We're talking about access to information and not keeping it behind walls. Because that enhances research. It makes it more available. You know what other people are doing, and you can compare. And you can establish niches. When you start to look at that information and then apply algorithms, you can see where the niches are in terms of moving forward with respect to natural product research, and also the techniques that are being used, other than what's already in the literature. Anybody like to take that one on? Quick story.
Yes, quick story. That approach on consolidating, research information is institutionalized in the Philippines. It's a Republic Act. It's the Philippine National Health Research System law in the Philippines. I sit in the committee. And through that, a system, a database, if you may call, was created. It's called HERDIN. I can't even remember the meaning of that acronym. It's accessible through a public portal. The approach is through regional data input. There are, let me just try to recall now, there are 13 major regions in the Philippines, and in each region there's a Health Research Consortium. So it's crowdsourcing, which means every member institution puts in their data as their role in in participating in that consortium through the region, which brings together the national system. However, there's a weakness in it because it's voluntary still. It's not mandatory. Therefore, you could still, if you not share something that you do not want to share. So what's visible in the public is only what's willingly shared by the participants.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Janelle. Anyone else like to make a comment about this? Ibrahim.
Well, using AI, MML is something very new. In Malaysia, quite recent, using all this database analysis and so on to improve understanding the mechanistic happening of multi-component, multi-receptor interactions in the body, especially if we are working on complex molecule and herbal preparation, for example. So it's a lot of database has already been established worldwide, yeah, on this, but Malaysia is still new. But however, I like to look at although there's a lot of benefits as you mentioned just, I like to look at the negative impact. Yeah, negative impact of depending too much on AI and ML without realizing the impact to students' learning of the fundamental science. Because if you are using AI, ML, you are depending a lot on black box solutions without understanding what is the mechanism, what's happening inside it. So this will result in lack of critical thinking, yeah, analysis of the students, unless the student make an effort to really understand what's going on, rather than depending too much on what they got results, after the processing, yeah, the output from the database analysis, they got a result, and then that's all. So this will lead also to generation of scientists. If you are a chemist, you know you are not a real chemist because you are using a lot of computer-based analysis. I'm not saying it's not useful, yeah. You're using, for example, you are using computer-aided drug design analysis. All these are prediction. Prediction cannot be correct 100%. Yeah, and you need to be validated by experimental studies, in vitro, in vivo, and so on. So if you are going towards AI, ML, yeah, it is used, or they can be used as support. It cannot be used as an alternative. Yeah, the traditional way of discovering drugs, although reductionist approach has been criticized because of the failure, very high failure rate to come up with new drugs in the pipeline, but they still play a role. The coming age of AI, ML, I think they should support the traditional or conventional way of discovering new molecule without compromising the fundamental science that students need to learn. Yeah. Otherwise, you have a generation of students later on that depend too much on computer-based predictive methods of learning to come up with output, which is, to me, dangerous, especially if one day you don't have really good chemists, good biochemists, that you have a lot of them very good in computer-based big data analysis, a lot of all this, which is, I'm not saying it's not important, but they have to be balanced, yeah? Balance of knowledge, where using AI, ML only as a tool, yeah. not totally. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Anne?
Yeah, I just want to share the situation in Thailand. Usually, we don't have the commercial database for everyone, but we know that which kind of database we could looking for the reputed universities. For example, like Department of Pharmacy from the Mahidol University, like they have quite a good database that the public can't get the access to. But the thing is, like, I know another person from my Sierra Hospital, like in metabolic centers, he have the largest library of the naturally occurring compounds in his mass spec database. So basically, like, he tried to combine all the standard compounds like available in the market globally, like into his collection. So basically, like right now, he wouldn't show out to the public, but his aim is that once he achieves the certain period of his milestone, he probably show it out to the public for free, that everyone can access it. So basically, like the database in our country is pretty much like have the limitation of the people that can share the information into the database, because like the owner of the database system gonna afraid that whether that kind of information is accurate or not.
Right. This is a global issue. The accuracy of the data that's accumulated, and also there's very often some intellectual property issues that are associated with the data as well. Yeah. I'll come back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I think about the databases, for me, like me doing some metabolomics analysis, and then suffering for some information regarding the mass spec of some compounds. Usually when we use LC-MS. When we use GC-MS, it's no problem because it's quite established. But other things that we have to know about the data system or the artificial intelligence is like in Indonesia, our ministry is already announced about Biomedical and Genome Science Initiative, so BGSI. So this is like, we would like to develop some approach for the precision medicines. So by using many databases from the patients, and also for the diseases and therapy or something else, we would like to give some treatment, the right treatment.
Right.
This is also will affect for us as the natural product chemistry to find something, new molecules or new entities that can be used for the right treatment of that. I think sometimes for the that grab many data or something else is very important also.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Faisal.
I definitely agree with what my dear friend Prof. Ibrahim said about the need for researchers to think out of the box, to maintain critical thinking. That's extremely important. If not, you will be following what everybody else is doing. But saying that, I think there is a use of AI that I think is not really been used. I mean, I might be wrong because I've been out of touch with the university for many years. But one of the biggest problems that I've seen when talking to, I used to do a lot of these talks in the university, is that when I started talking to PhD students, master students and all that, there seems to be a lot of repetition between university on research. A lot of it. As a country, or maybe about the other rest of the Asian country, do you have a centralized data for your research? Because bear in mind, we spend billions on doing PhD student research, and a lot of them have been done again and again and again and again. So, and also another thing that I realized is that when I talk to students, because I remember it was a conference in USM many years ago on pharmacology. So I was one of the speakers as entertainment because I'm the industry side, right? So, and there was a wonderful presentation by this bunch of all ladies. They are students from in USM from I think about 3 different countries. And they were talking about this one particular plant. I can't remember which plant. I think it's a Chorus calamus or one of the family that have an active ingredient, a molecule that can be extracted out that is similar to this very expensive synthetically produced drug for the heart. Okay? And I was quite impressed by it because that drug is extremely expensive. So they started the presentation by saying that they have 7 species of this particular plant, but they were randomly taking it to check which to take the plant and then work with it. So I asked a very simple question: among all the 7 plants, which one have the highest content? And the girls told me that they say, "Oh, we are not sure because nobody have done that research before." You see, to me there is a gap. The research are not controlled. Okay, and then I asked her, so they randomly just took one, identified the research, and then I asked them again, so what's next? Because it's very exciting. I say, oh, that's it. We submit our paper. There's no continuity. So at the end of the day, you have an amazing, beautiful paper, but you have no application.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a serious problem. This is a serious problem as to how much money is going into research without there being a pretty well-defined outcome. Yeah, and I've talked about this too. Part of it is the system. You have to have the support system from the government in terms of developing progressive research programs where you're actually building enterprise. And enterprise to lead to a product. Right, yeah. Let me just go back on one thing that was discussed about structures by Ibrahim. In one of my very first lectures as an undergraduate chemist was from a very famous organic chemist and who was very interested in biosynthesis. And he said to me, as one of the class members, but it stuck with me and has resonated with me ever since, that nature does not produce what it cannot produce. Nature does not produce what it cannot produce. So you think about that in terms of AI. You think about that in terms of molecular networking. You think about that in terms of whether the structure that you're proposing from your system, right, as being present is in fact a reasonable natural product. Can it be made? And I've seen situations where no, it can't be made. So the structure's not correct. That proposal, as you were saying, is a potential proposal. It's not an answer. Okay. Janelle, did you have something else to add? Okay. We're going to move to a completely different topic now. Completely different topic. And this topic is basically the new world that we're living in with respect to publications and everything that happens before, during, and after a publication now. If you've published a paper recently, you're probably getting emails every day that are coming from some journal, some webinar, conference, some live conference that's going to be in the beautiful city of Athens, you know, next year, or wouldn't you like to go to Rome, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that kind of thing. And if you don't respond the first time positively, then you're invited to be a guest editor. And if you don't respond to being a guest editor, then you say, well, we'd like to honor you with a volume in your name, all right? All you have to do is do all the hard work to put this together. We're living in that world. There is a publication that I want to make you aware of before we get into the discussion. There's a publication that's called Combating Predatory I'm trying to think what the full title here. Combating Predatory Academic Meetings and, Academic Publication and Conferences. And it was published in April of 22, and it deals with 1,800 participants from 110 countries who have recorded their experiences and have recorded some of the solutions to combating these experiences, what the strategies are. And basically what this group recommends is that universities establish protocols and workshops for students, for faculty, to make them aware of what's going on so that they're not sucked into these systems. Just a reminder here that there are about 15,000 predatory journals out there now. 15,000. So be aware of that as you're thinking about what's going on. Now, so that goes back to July the 13th of 2023 here in Malaysia and what happened, where a decision was made at the very highest level, as I understand it, within the government, to not recommend and not fund the publication of manuscripts in 3 sets of journals, from Hindawi, from MDPI, and from Frontiers. And my guess is that many of you have been solicited by either 1, 2, or 3 of those companies. Some of those journals are very good. Some of those journals now have a very good scientific reputation and have accrued pretty good impact factors. Those impact factors are very often what is being used to judge you as a faculty member or a department or an individual, or you're required as a student to make certain commitments to publishing and have a paper published or at least accepted before you get your degree, all right, as a qualification. So in the new world, right, there has to be some shifting going on now, all right, because those group of publishers are off limits if you're in Malaysia. I want to go back to what's going on in other countries, but one of the how can I put it? There needs to me, there needs to be a compromise here with respect to quality versus quantity. Everybody is accruing numbers. Everybody's accruing numbers. And I always give the example, well, at Harvard University, you know, or Stanford, or, you know, ETH or UCL in London, my guess is they don't worry too much about numbers. They worry about quality, all right? And that's where the compromise needs to be. So it's an issue for me that relates to how people are being assessed by administrations, how universities are being assessed by their ministries. So we've got those issues. We've got issues related to open access and open access journals, which relates to money. And of course, the money issue is who pays for the author publication charges? Does the government pay? Does indirectly or directly? Who's paying for this? And one of the major concerns that countries around the world are having, and some bigger systems are looking at, is the issue of, can we negotiate lower publication fees on a countrywide basis? Not just an institutional basis, but on a countrywide basis. Because those author publication fees should probably be going to research, supporting research, right? I will also let you in on another little secret, which is that the most profitable business in the world is being an academic publisher, all right? So these publishing companies are making an absolute fortune. So something is moving. There's movement in the world. There's movement in the world in terms of open access. There's movement in the world in terms that's free, and there's movement in the world in terms of open science as to how you present your materials to the world and get that reviewed and bring it back, refine it, and then publish it online. So I'd like some thoughts from the panelists. Anyone who'd like to take that one on? And then I want to open it up to a few comments, because it's a major issue now for all of us. Who wants to tackle it? Yes? All right, Janelle. No, because you know, you're doing lots of publishing. What's the reality for you?
Yes. So there will be views here. Perhaps the regional level is not the same issues, but perhaps I'll speak at the national level so that the community will know what's going on in the Philippines. This month is the review period for university performances in the country. And I'm part of the committee in our institution that has to prepare these documents, and the measure is not quality. And this is the National Regulatory Agency. The language here is numbers. Not even language of impact factor. That's not part of the measure. It's just numbers. But the measure must be must be published in either of the three: WOS, Scopus, and there's the third measure, the ASEAN Citation Index. So any of these three is game. So you ask the question of which rule will you follow if you are working within the national framework. Of course, you follow the national framework, right? If that's the level of vision that you would like to do. But if we're looking at regional or global scientific quality, there's a different perspective as well, and that perspective is not even the same, right? So, in my perspective, if we're looking at building a community at the national level, the rule of thumb is a national framework. And this national framework within the ASEAN region may not be at the same expectations. Right? Now, the question of how do we respond as academics here? Okay. Agree with you, the quality control of these publications goes all the way down at the university level, because the university is our employer. So this quality control should fall in the administrators of the university. How do we respond to the national regulatory framework at the same time make sure that our academics' career and research needs are served? Now, there's cost there as well. I sit in the budget committee of the university, so cost is a factor in the operations. So what we do is we determine how much could the university afford. That predetermines how much we could do for the year, because we operate on an annual budget, and that's the reality. Whether it's a private institution or a state university, you are bound by what your budget could afford. Now, if is this predatory or is this business driven? In my opinion, it should not be a problem of the academic. It's a matter that's need to be addressed by the administrators, because the academics are doing the discovery, doing the research, doing the contribution to the body of knowledge. How to disseminate that should be supported by the administration through policies that will enable the success of these academics.
Let me ask you a question on a national basis. Do you see any movement in the Philippines where the government would step in and say that we are going to negotiate rates for various charges and fees with a publisher like Elsevier or Wiley, and do it for all the universities in the country at one sitting? Because at the moment you've got NDAs operating between universities where your university doesn't know what UST is paying for access to journals.
Yeah. The cost of these access, because there's two ways. There's two major systems here: the state university system,
right, and the
that's
private,
paid for by the government, and the private institutions that's supported through tuitions and fees.
Right, right.
In the Philippines, the regulatory agency does not provide direct support to private universities. So the private universities are left on their own to find ways to get access to this information. Yeah. Perhaps in the state university system that can be done. But there's two major state university split or divisions here. The national university system, which is the University of the Philippines, and then the rest of the regional state universities. In the national university, access to this information is not an issue because their budget comes directly from Congress.
Okay.
The state university, the regional state university systems depend on the national agency we call as the Commission on Higher Education, and budget appropriations don't seem to be equitable.
Okay.
Now, what's my position here in publishing in open access? And this comes from experience. Not all universities in the Philippines could afford this subscription-only journals. And from the perspective of access, I support open access publication. Why? It's because this enables government or state-funded research to become available to Filipinos who could not afford access to subscription-only journals. Now, the quality is a different story there.
Yeah. Anybody else? Anne?
Well, our situation is pretty much similar. If you think about the national-wise, like we don't have that kind of the policy for that. I think like they think this is something not in their top priority. So basically like they postpone this kind of like national negotiation to the journalists. So basically like if you think about to team up all the university to negotiate with the government, and the thing is like each university gonna think that, okay, if we do that, it's gonna be a very complicated process. And will take a very hard fight to the government. And if think about their time and earning, they think like probably it's not really necessary to do it now. So they just postpone this issue. All right, so that means like we have to think about the university level. So when the university level, each university gonna negotiate on their own. For example, my university, like we do negotiate with some open access database as well. We have now like 3 like ACS, Cambridge, and Berkeley. So basically like they try to announce to everyone in the faculties that you better like prioritize to publish your manuscript in these journals. But the thing is you have to inform the university first because that is the limited number in this negotiation. So basically it seems like first come, first serve, right? And if you miss that kind of like trend, you probably have to pay yourself for the publication processing fee, all right? So when you come with the processing fee for each journal, now it's not depend on the university, it's gonna depend on each faculty. And for example, like our faculty, like really want to support all the publications. So basically they say that, okay, we will categorize you according to the impact factor. So if you can publish into the high impact factor, you get a higher budget for the publication processing fee. For example, if you can publish in the impact factor like over 3, you can get a supportive budget by over, I think, 13,000 RM. So that means like you have no need to pay for yourself because you can reimburse all the budget from the faculty, all right? And not only that, when you think about the numbers, the quality and the quantity. And well, you know, in terms of research level, we couldn't avoid the quantity because like they try to put the KPI for each researcher that you need to publish at least like 1 paper a year. Otherwise, you have been considered for the performance score. And also this gonna affect in terms of like academic promotion as well. Because like in our system, we have the central regulation for the promotion that gonna be count according to the number and then judged by the quality later. So basically like number come first, quality come later, all right? And the thing is like, if you have the higher number to the certain point, let's imagine like once you want to promote it, and they say if you have 3 publications, you can get at least like assistant professorship, but with the other criteria. But the thing is like, if you get probably higher than that, for example, like 10 publications, you have no need to get any like external judge for your promotion evaluation. So basically like people try to get the number instead of the quality in order to avoid the judgment from the external examiners. So that kind of the thing that we couldn't avoid. And even for the research department, you know, not only in the researcher level, but research department level, they do own have the force for themselves to get the numbers of the publications as their KPI as well. Like for our department, it's usually like you need to count the number for the publication in Q1 and top 10. So basically like they try to combine both quantity and quality together, but still number first and quality later.
Ibrahim?
I remember 10, 15 years ago where the APC is not around, or maybe later than that, yeah. We publish our work or papers in journals without paying. We don't have an education from our grant. And publication is based on merit or quality of your papers. There's no such thing as Q1, Q2, C3. We go for our flagship journals. For example, you have like our area, Nature Product, maybe you go for Planta Medica, Phytochemistry, Phytomedicine, and so on. Yeah. They, until today, some have gone into hybrid, but now most of them still no APC. So you can publish your work for free, I mean, for the researchers. I think there's only one advantage, maybe I'm a bit biased, of open access APC, is that your paper is accessible to readers. Yeah, once it's published. We don't need to pay for, if it's subscription based, then you need to pay to get the paper. So just one maybe positive things about it. But disadvantage is it's actually commercialization of publishing scholarly papers. I think it should be based on quality, based on merit. But once you commercialize it, then people who don't have enough fund, although they have very high quality paper to publish, but they don't have fund, they cannot publish in this subjournal. And another thing is will be publication bias, right? Because although they don't say it, if journals, then with APC, you get it, your paper published very fast. But no APC, it may make it difficult. So these are things like, I think it's going to be continued in the future.
Yeah,
it's not good for publication of quality papers. Yeah. You are going for quantity, but not quality. To be a good scientist, to be scientifically visible in your area, you have to challenge yourself to publish in your flagship journals, regardless of whether it's APC, no APC. That's my take on that.
Yeah, I forget to mention about that as well. Like the difficulties to get the quality paper is that the financial support. To be honest, like for example, like the grants here in, I think, I'm not really sure in other countries, but in Thailand, we have quite a limited budget compared to the European countries to support the research. But we all know that like to get the very good publication, you need a lot of resources to put in that. Either like the qualified researcher the materials and reagents and the instruments. And the thing is like the part is about the chemical reagents and instruments that are a lot more expensive than in the European countries. So basically like how come we can get the good quality with a limited budget? And even like, you know, the suppliers charge us like at least 10 to 20% each year for the price of the chemicals and reagents, but the budget supporting us remain the same throughout 10 years. You know, the thing is like, you know, we all want very good publication for ourselves and for nation, but the reality doesn't, you know, encourage us to do so. And also like with the accessibility of the publication of the manuscript, if you don't have the money, so you can't access it, right? So that means like you need at least the good connections. For example, like sometimes we like don't have the money and no access to this journal, so we need the connections to another university or like the foreign friends, like in the European university. We can ask them to access that manuscript for us. That's the issue for now in Thailand.
Yeah, I agree with Prem. Yeah, that situation is also occurring in Indonesia. So financial support and quality of the resources also, some of research institutions or university is lack of that. 10 years ago, Indonesia would like boosting the number, like the Philippines also. By proceedings indexed by Scopus. As you know, maybe our friend from Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Philippines invite many international symposium in Indonesia. As you can see, now there is some regulation now that we would like to have to good quality of the publications. Our ministry now coming with some regulation that if you would like to to gain your professorship or to gain some associate professor or something else, you have to publish in that kind of journal, like you have to key 1, key 2, key 3, something like that. And there is some regulation not coming out that some now maybe discussed in our ministry about the 3 publisher, because Malaysia is already informed that situation to not publish to that kind of publisher. So maybe our ministry now, I don't know, but our research institution like National Research and Innovation Agency already proclaimed that their researcher don't publish at the MDPI, only MDPI that I remember, not Hindawi and also Frontiers. So they forced the researcher to publish in the no open access, because they say that the no open access is more quality than the open access. This is some situations in Indonesia, but in the university it's different. We still can publish in the MDPI Hindawi Frontiers, but I don't know until when. But for gain to the professorship, if you like submit your paper from the MDPI, it will not be reviewed, from our ministry.
Right, thank you. I'd like to open it up now for some questions, comments. Anybody like to make a comment on this topic of publishing, the costs, the future, open access? Yeah? No? No comments? Really? Yes. Dulcie.
When I was a scientist in South Africa, we had the situation that the government funded the university or gave them some money per publication, no matter what the quality was. And some of that money got passed on to the researcher to use for travel, etc. So it was a massive incentive to publish all sorts of rubbish. And I think it's still the situation in South Africa. moving to the UK, one top quality publication a year gets you through your annual appraisal and whatever. The quality is what you need, because the university gets rated every so many years in a research assessment exercise, and it's quality, not publication. And it's quite a nice environment to work on, that you're not rushing to publish as much as you can. You keep it, put your work together into producing one really good paper rather than a few mediocre ones.
Dulce, I have a question for you in terms of your personal reporting as a faculty member. Do you have a KPI
Yes.
in the English system now, or not?
Oh, yes. How much research funding you bring in a year, how many publications?
No, but in terms of publications, like
and
if you get a grant, are you expected to produce like 2 publications per grant that you get, or anything like that?
No, not at
Okay.
all.
Yeah.
But certainly when we look at applicants for positions, it's all on quality of publications.
Right. Okay. Nordin?
Just a thought. I think maybe the institution themselves, the university or the ministry should formulate how they really want to assess the contribution or the performance of their, because I think that's what they want to do, is to assess performance of each individual. But by just calculating the numbers from publication, I think it's not really the good way to have a really good assessment. Probably so the institution itself or
Right.
the country
Right.
itself has to formulate it. How it's to
Yeah.
be done.
The problem is, as I understand it, is that there's higher powers that are operating in terms of evaluating, are you a research university or are you not a research university? And that's where it gets messy. Any other questions? And then we're going to finalize this. One more quick question, comment. Yes?
Hi, my name is Yasmin. I'm currently one of the master student here, and actually instead of a question, it's more of a comment where I feel that as a current master student, I feel this forum and what you've been discussing today has been very enlightful, and I feel that through this discussion, it is something, the topics that's been discussed is something that I've also been thinking about, and I'm very happy to see that it has also been discussed also amongst fellow researchers, and I hope that through this there will be some positive outcome and solution with this very proactive discussion. And I just want to say thank you and for the forum today, and I think it's been very helpful and beneficial, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and you're most welcome. Prof. Hadiani, let me make one quick closing comment here. First of all, I want to thank the audience for being here, for listening, for the questions and the comments. Then I'd like to thank all of the panel members for their contributions, for giving their view of what's going on in their country on some of these various hot topics in natural products and being an academic. So thank you very much, each one of you, for that. The check is in the mail. We're just kidding. Let me hand back to Prof. Hadiani now to close, and then we'll go for lunch.
Thank you very much, Professor Kotel, and all the panelists that sacrificed your good 2 hours to be with us today. All right. The forum actually has been an idea and requested by many of our senior scientists in MMPS. And there's a lot of thoughts that goes behind it as well. I'm not sure whether Professor Kozira is still online somewhere listening to this forum, because I would like to thank her for her ideas and thoughts that goes behind planning on this forum. But today here we have Professor Nordin, who actually mooted the idea of us to have this forum during the conference in order to give participants a platform for deliberation. With that, I would like Prof. Nordin to just say a few words whether this forum has come up to your expectation. Thank you.
Just allow me to say a few words. I think I'm very happy that, finally this forum is been featured in this conference, because I think this is one of the important things that we get together here, so that we know, what is coming up, or what, other than the proper subjects or that we are researching, but as mentioned by a few of the speakers just now, that talking to one another is very important, because in this discussion, I think we have, realized that, to do research is, you have to identify really what the problem is. Then you can really carry out the proper research, or the really what really you want to do, because I think this is the beginning. I think it's we have an industry, industrial, so we know we have to know what their problem is, and how we, we want to try to solve, because I think natural products, chemistry or whatever field, is just the fundamental, is a tool, actually a tool to solve problems. So if you can identify really the real problems of the industry, of whatever, products that you, in producing the products, then we can achieve really something meaningful. I think that's what has also happened in our palm oil industry, so that how it develops, and by having industry, proper industry, then we really can gain, the financial assistance and so on, from that, So another thing I want to say is that from the beginning of this, natural product, when we establish a natural product, is that we want to make this society as a forum for this knowing one another and talking to one another. That's what. And actually, in the first few lecture conference, we have biologists also taking part. I think I remember. I think the first one or two research that I was involved was this, in identifying the insect attractant of the weevils that is pollinating palm oil, or oil palm, oil palm. The weevil actually is imported from Africa and imported to Malaysia, and actually there is some attractants that from the flowers that attract these weevils, so that pollination can take place. So these are. So what I want to say is that I think we can. I would like to see also that this is also open the talk communication with other disciplines. We are happy that pharmacology or pharmacy has been involved very much in this in this conference. So I think we have really developed very much cooperation with, or interdisciplinary between these two. But I would like to see probably with agriculture, what is their problem in agriculture, what natural products can contribute to them, and so on. So I think especially now that we have the problem with food supply, food economy. So I think that is what I probably I wish to see in future, that more more talking, more communication between different parts. So I think with that, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Prof, for the some advice and what you would like to see in the future. Inshallah, we will be gearing up to that. Okay, I think this is the point that we shall conclude the forum today. Let's give our panelists and host a big round of applause. But the conference is not concluded yet, okay? We still have one closing lecture, okay? After lunch, and then we have a closing with a prize-giving ceremony. So please don't go away. Please enjoy your lunch and come back for the closing lecture. Thank you very much.